Okay, you're welcome along. So this is the conclusion of the group stages. This is a bonanza weekend of football. Our GAA coverage on the podcast, with thanks to AIB at the heart of Gaelic games across club and county. And in 2025, they're celebrating a decade of sponsoring the All-Ireland Senior Football Championships. And with this championship more open than ever, they're more excited than ever to bring fans closer to the action. You can check out #TheToughest for more. And it really is like bumper weekend. So on Saturday, the group of death, as we've come to know and love it, they're both 6:30 throw-ins. They're both on GAA+. Armagh will play Galway. That's at Breffni Park. And then Park Esler, Dublin, will play Derry. So permutations there are interesting. I'll get to them in a few moments. Roscommon will play Cork then in the other group. That's in O'Moore Park in Laois. That's on 4:15 on the Saturday. Also 4:15 on the Saturday, Kerry will play Meath. That's in Offaly in O'Connor Park. That one's a bit more straightforward. Kerry and Meath are both through. The Roscommon Cork game is basically a shootout, so we'll see who goes through between Roscommon and Cork. And then Sunday, Tyrone Cavan, Brewster Park 4 o'clock, and Donegal Mayo, Dr. Hyde Park 4 o'clock on RTE. That is super interesting. Basically, everyone's on the same number of points. Everybody can be eliminated. Everybody can go through. Everything can happen in that group. And then the final group on Sunday, 2 o'clock throw-ins. Monaghan Down is on RTE, and Louth Clare is on in O'Moore Park. Basically, in that group, Monaghan and Down are through. Louth or Clare, it's a shootout. So that's kind of nicely set up in that respect, nice and simple. Happy to say Tomás Ó Sé is with us. Good to talk to you again, Tomás.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Very well. A few bits of news this week. I just saw before coming in, Jarlath Burns was speaking yesterday, and he had, about 2 months ago, been saying that moving the All-Ireland finals into August wouldn't happen under his presidency. But he said yesterday, it actually now might happen. So they're looking at it, and it might be 2027 when it comes in. He was asked why it couldn't happen next year, and basically the concerts at Croke Park are already booked in. There's commercial activity, but he was sort of saying, do you know what, I was saying it wouldn't happen under my watch, but actually it might now. So 2027 we might have All-Ireland finals in August, which I think everyone feels is maybe the sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of... I like a lot of football, Joe. I like the games coming thick and heavy, but they're coming a bit too thick and heavy. And then when you come to the latter stages of the championship, when you get to where we are around now, it just seems to fly and take off. And then I've no problem. I've no problem accepting that it isn't going to be in in September ever again. I've no problem with that. I think we're still losing a huge connection with children, especially primary school children, in the build-up. But the way it is now, I'm sure sponsors have a major issue with how quick the semi-final to the final and then a replay match is dealt with in one day. I think there's leeway there. And to be fair, there was such change in it, and you basically have now a National League and a Championship running straight after each other. There's no break. There's no 3 or 4 weeks. It's running straight into it the week after. There were going to be issues that would need to be ironed out, and at least they will be. I don't think you'll ever have the perfect championship. You won't, but at least everybody is on the one word that it needs to breathe that little bit more. You know, you saw the hurling. I actually have no issues with there being penalties in hurling. I have no problem. Like, the only argument you could make is because they have a lot more leeway, and Cork are now a month without a game, then you could say, yeah, why not have a replay because of the fact that they have so long to wait. But that's not the case in football. The case in football is it is jam-packed because you actually have an All-Ireland, which means all the counties play in it, bar Kilkenny. And then you have 2 counties outside of the country. So I've said it from the start, Joe, how can you fit a National League, a full National League, a provincial series, a All-Ireland series, which we're going through right now, and then a knockout quarter-final, semi-final and final all before middle of July? Jesus, like, it's of course it's going to need time to breathe, and it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer, and I hope they go 2 or 3 weeks into August. If they're going to do it right, do it. You know, if they're going to actually address it, do it right and do it from the start.
Yeah, It is too much. And even for the sides who qualify this weekend and finish in third, it's kind of nuts, really, then, their schedule, because they will have to do 3 weekends in a row as part of this weekend, the preliminary quarterfinal and the quarterfinal. But then just to reach a final, that's 4 matches in 5 weeks. And if they get to the final, that final is their 5th match in 7 weeks. And like, you don't really want to lose an All-Ireland final because you're wrecked. You know, you want a bit of space. So they'll come up with
It would be some achievement for a team to come from that position and win it out, because it's not even the I'd say players, Joe, wouldn't actually mind, because I'd say they're minded so well that in between those games, week in, week out, they're minded to such a degree that the body will be okay the week after. I'd say it's the turnaround in terms of the logistics, in terms of analysis, in terms of preparation from outside, that it is a head wrecker, and it's coming so fast. And so, like, they're probably used to it at a lesser degree in the National League because the games are coming so fast at them. But Championship, I presume there'll be a lot more work going into it, a lot more time spent on opposition teams, and you're developing your kickouts a lot more. You're trying to look at yourself and you're trying to look at the opposition. And if you're going week in, week out, on top of a job, on top of travel, on top of everything else, it gets wearing. Like,
one other one just to throw at you, and I'm not just trying to get you more TV work, but basically, I'm sympathetic to the concept of GAA Plus. I think it's reasonably good value. I know people are hard pressed at the moment and life is expensive, and I don't want to be glib about that. But I think for a lot of people, it's relatively affordable for what you get, certainly in comparison to most things in life at the moment. So I'm not just against GAA Plus totally as a concept, but I have to say this weekend, it really forces you to look at where they've landed with this. So basically, on Saturday, there is no football game on TV. And this is the Saturday which is going to have Armagh against Galway and Dublin Derry, the group of death, the climax to it, where everybody bar Armagh can go out. It's going to be a big evening at GAA. And neither of those 2 games are on TV. And you kind of think, like, that can't be right. Something there has gone awry if we're at that kind of a spot.
yeah, I'd have a strange one on that now. Like, I'd actually say that they are on television, only that you actually have to pay for it. Like,
Sure, fair point. Okay.
yeah, but I would, don't get me wrong. Last year when all the hurling, like, I take it from and it's wrong. I would have an understanding of how, not in any huge level, of how RT work, but I do know that they get X amount of games, and that for some of those games, they have to pick them a little bit further back.
Sure.
And I'm not sure what power they have to pick, and I think they should have power to pick on a weekly basis to ensure that they get the right ones that they need. Now, when you have GAA Plus in the mix and they get X amount of games, GAA Plus probably have had better games to watch and more exciting games to watch. And as the championship goes on, RT then comes in with a lot more. But I don't think it's a hugely, like, there's so much football, so much hurling. It's impossible to show them all. I get that. But if you want to see those games on Saturday, they are on. And I'll be watching them. But I do understand free to air. But I'd be consistent in this. When everybody was raging last year when Cork Tip wasn't shown in the hurling, and it was on TV somewhere, I'd say, hang on a second, it was on television.
Yeah.
And I get the older generation and it should be free to air, but you can't have free to air for every single match that's on. I'd have more of an issue, Joe, with the fact, even though they're both qualified, Monaghan and Down are on TV on Sunday and they have nothing to play for.
No.
Kerry and Meath are nowhere at all. Not even on television anywhere. So I'd have more of an issue with that than I would. As long as I think we're in an age where everything is accessible, and I have no problem with that. If you have to pay for a game online to see it, and if I'm a Galway fan, and if I have to pay for that, I'll pay for it and I'll watch it on television.
Yeah.
But I do have an issue if it's not there at all in an age where every club game and counties are being shown.
No, that's a fair point. I accept that. Your point about being able to change RT's decision last minute, I don't know what kind of a lead-in they have to make, but that's a there should be maybe a bit more flexibility there. I don't know, when the GAA are sitting down at the start of the year, and I know they want to make a commercial success of GAA Plus, and so therefore you have to hold some of the good stuff back or nobody will pay for GAA Plus. I understand that. But I that balance between marketing, and I would kind of think to myself, well, do you know what? We're trying to make a real go of this round robin series. One of the reasons we're having 3 qualify from a group of 4 is because we want to make the final weekend really exciting. That's kind of the reason that the first 2 rounds there's not much jeopardy is because we want that last weekend to be brilliant. So I'd be thinking, even just as a marketing exercise to get those primary school kids watching, to get everybody excited, let's circle that weekend and say we want a bit more free to air that night.
Yeah.
But
I'd agree. I mean, there's 2 huge matches there. Why not have one of them?
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I'd agree fully there, like.
But GAA Plus, look, people will see them in the main, or hopefully lots of people will. Let's start with that then on Saturday evening. There are a lot of permutations here, and there's nothing more boring than somebody reading out permutations to everybody, so I'll try and keep it simple. Basically, Dublin-Derry in Port Kessler. Derry have a very simple mindset going into this game. If they beat Dublin, they're through. So it's very easy for Derry. For Dublin, if they lose to Derry and Armagh win, then they'll be okay. But if they lose to Derry and Galway win against Armagh, then Dublin are out of the championship. Galway situation, if Derry beat the Dubs and they lose to Armagh, they are gone. And then there's a way where Galway and Derry will get into a points difference thing. We don't have to worry about that. But basically, if Galway and Derry lose, it'll come down to points difference because they drew, so it's not head-to-head. So basically, bar Armagh, the other 3 are looking at their games and saying, these are must-win. We can't afford to leave this to chance. Fascinated for your thoughts on Dublin-Derry. So, Dublin, trying to get a form line on this lot. Away to Galway. Okay, we're cooking. We're moving. Home to Armagh. 17 wides, 40 shots on goal, 18 points. Maybe dominated is strong. Had a lot of the game, but a weird day in front of the posts. Where are they? What makes sense of them?
I don't. I read somewhere where at least they're creating the chances, and that's fixable. Scoring, like at halftime during the last Dubs game, I didn't think Armagh would take their foot off the gas. I thought Armagh would keep going like they did in the second quarter of the first half. So the Dubs started off really well. They were moving the ball crisply, causing trouble, kicking the ball into the full forward line. They had Armagh on the racks. They were doing well in their own kickouts. Then halfway through that half, Armagh got to grips in midfield. And when Armagh got to grips in midfield, they did make a count on the scoreboard and they squeezed the life out of Dublin. And at halftime, I could not see a way back for Dublin. And part of the reason I couldn't see the way back for Dublin was that they were getting absolutely smashed on their kickouts, and I felt that Armagh had them sussed. Now, credit to Dublin at halftime, they got the kickouts. They dominated their own. I think they only lost one. And on the Armagh kickouts, they won about half, which is a ridiculous stat to have. So they had the ball. They created the chances. And I see, there's so many people talking, the old Dublin team wouldn't do what they were doing. And sure, I think we all accept that it's not the old Dublin team. So what they'll have to do is focus in on that part of their game that didn't work. But that's too easy and too simplistic, Joe, because they also have to make sure they get the kickouts off again and that they're defending the way they are. So a lot of things have to go right for you to win any particular game. I don't know where the Dubs are at, to be quite honest with you. I do think that you'd be silly to write them off. But then you look at where Derry are coming from, and you look where the match is going to be on. And I've been above in Park Esler. I think it's going to be an unbelievable occasion. I think it's a stadium that will be jammed. I think the atmosphere will be electric. I think the crowd are down on top of you. And that makes it more intriguing from a Derry point of view, because I would think psychologically Derry will think that gives them an advantage coming into it.
Yeah.
The one part of it that Dublin will sniff, I would say, is Derry have come to life. They have some key players playing really, really well, but they're still shipping an amount of goals. But if they can sort that one out, I would give Derry a great chance in that.
Yeah.
However, I'd find it easy enough not to write off Dublin, if that makes sense as well. But I would give Derry a huge chance in this game, because of the fact of where it's on, because of the form that they're in, because of the confidence that people are, I suppose, down on Dublin because of the Galway game, because of parts of the um, Galway match and parts of the Armagh match. So I think it's wide open, but I would say I'd give a slight advantage to Derry.
All right, okay. The word seems to be they're hopeful of Con being back, so that'll improve things. Just on the wides the last day, I'm not even talking about some of the maybe further out two-pointer efforts, although like they weren't impossible either. I mean, Reno Neal would have kicked them. We just saw some odd wides for inter-county players, like wides you couldn't believe. So I'm inclined to sort of write that off as just a very strange day at the office. I don't live a million miles away from the stadium. It's quite blustery in my back garden. I'm kind of clutching at straws for them there. But the wides were actually bizarre.
Yeah, they were bizarre, Joe, because they were so far off the mark. They were taking shots when they shouldn't have been taking shots. The execution was all off. I think they weren't getting it. Like they were renowned. They were renowned for getting the ball into the right position, into the right man's hands, and that wasn't happening for them. If you have like a forward line, Kilkenny, Dell, Bugler, who started off in the half back line, I think actually Paddy Small, Costello, Con is a huge loss. Con is a massive loss to them. And don't get me wrong, they're still creating the chances, but it was completely, I think it was because it was Dublin and because it was that was the worst performance they gave from an execution point of view in the opposition half, I'd say, in years.
Yeah.
And that's why everybody's talking about it. I'd say most other teams have days like that more often. But why would you not expect it? Or why would you not?
Because they were just so bad. I can't explain why it happened. You know, I'm thinking there was one where like it was given to Sean Bugler. And he's well inside the D, and it cuts to Desi, and Desi's just like 1,000-yard stare, doesn't even know how to react to it. It was just so odd that they're all better kickers than that. You know, these were like 8 out of 10 type shots normally, and so I'm inclined to just say they would need to do that again for me to think that that's the standard of those players shooting.
Yeah, well, it's an easy fix. Like I mean, in your own head, if you're as a player and you get a shot and you attempt a shot from 45 yards out on the outside of the right boot and you miss, you'll think again before you do that, and you'll probably get a bollocking or two at half time or off one of your teammates. The bigger worry was the ones that were closer in that should have been got.
See, I'm giving them a free pass for them because they're just so ridiculous. Those misses, they're just so odd. I'm like, I just can't see them at Port Kessler missing a 20-meter kick again under not much pressure. Yeah. But listen, we could be talking next week, and I'd say, Jesus, it happened again.
Yeah, but I mean, Joe, we were discussing before we came on air, like just because a team does one thing in one match, then oh Christ, people are seeing that strength. Therefore, it'll be negated the next day. It's not. I think I'm crying out for a little bit of consistency. It's so hard to read teams.
Yeah.
But Dublin, in that first 15 minutes and for the second half, in the first half, I suppose their execution was that little bit better. But they created. They created, and it'd be hard to go against them if they like some. I talk to Dub friends, and they'd make a huge argument, and they'd say, "Yeah, we should be taking Armagh." And then I'm saying to myself, Jesus, where are they coming from with this? Like, and I wouldn't see that. I genuinely wouldn't see it. Like, how could they be confident enough that they'll take Armagh? And then you look back and you say, if they scored half of what they missed, they would have taken Armagh. Do you know? And no, having said that, did Armagh take the foot off the gas? It's very hard. I find it impossible. I hate actually discussing teams at the moment because it's so hard to read where they're at. Like,
yeah.
And the way I'd base that, Joe, is I'd be talking to a lot of people in Kerry, and the general talk would be Kerry aren't firing on all cylinders, yet we'd still give them a chance because nobody else is firing on all cylinders either.
No, the form lines are just all over the place here. By the way, is Port Kessler a good ground to play good football in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's I think it's going to summer championship. You'll get a right good championship buzz, and the two fanatical teams, two good teams to travel. It's not too far from Dublin. To be fair, I think all pitches were called right, and it's great to have matches on the road where both sets of supporters are travelling. the only whoever picked the pitch for the Kerry match would want to go back and do either a maths lesson or a geography
Well,
lesson.
to be fair, I don't think Donegal are loving going to the Hyde either with Mayo. But anyway,
Yeah, I
um,
think Sligo's there's a problem with Sligo with the
right.
yeah.
So speaking of teams that are hard to get a read on, Dublin, Derry. At the same time, Armagh will go in against Galway. So we've two problems here in trying to preview this game. One, Armagh might dictate the terms here in that they can go with second team or take certainly a few frontliners out. They can take the foot off the pedal here. They're going through. They're fine. So one, we don't know what way McGeeney will lean there. And secondly, we don't really know which Galway are going to turn up. On the first issue, I've heard it been said a lot this week about Armagh, like from people who really know their stuff. James Horan was saying it in the Examiner. Pat Spillane was saying it here in the podcast. Like, you do not take your foot off the pedal if you're Armagh. You do not risk losing momentum. And I'm sort of thinking, like, I get it, but I don't know if I buy it fully. Like, you see it in multiple sports: rugby, soccer, World Cups, group stages. They'll rest players for a dead duck game. They'll bring in squad players, keeps everybody happy, keeps everybody sharp in training. And like Armagh can have they could have won the last game and said, we've now a 3-4 week block training to ramp up for an All-Ireland quarter final. I don't think if a second string Armagh side lost to Galway, like the air would come out of it. So, but I don't know. You have a feel for these things. I don't, obviously.
I think the worry from a management point of view or a player point of view is the psychological damage it could do. If a team is tough enough to play a B team and to lose and not worry about it. Look at the Limerick hurlers, they did it. Are you telling me that there aren't people questioning what they did after losing to Cork? Was it the right thing? Were the players psychologically right? It's like a bat used to beat them with after. If you have a team that are comfortable enough, and I think if any team are psychologically right
Yeah.
after what they've gone through in Ulster the last number of years and come back and do what they did, including winning an All-Ireland, then Armagh are ready for it. I see the point that other people would make, saying that there is a risk in it. And the risk would be that if you play a second team, I think the biggest risk is what would happen in the dynamic of the players themselves. That basically you give fellas a chance to come in, and if a fella does very well at wing back, but the normal wing back has been rested, and for the next serious match, the old lad is brought back in, the fellow who did very well is dropped, then you're like, that takes a certain level of commitment and bond for there not to be issues within a camp. And that's one of the risks I think that you would be risking. Like, if you send out the message.
I'll tell you one thing though. The old fella who comes back in, say it was you'd be damn sure to play well in that quarter final.
Oh yeah,
There's a bit of that.
Yeah, I think there's pluses and minuses on both sides for it, Joe. I think, yeah, maybe there's a kind of I think what supporters, media, I think they jump on it, and I would think that's maybe somewhere the fear, and maybe where we shouldn't be listening to that, and maybe some teams are better at not listening to it than others. But I think it'd be strange. I think that McGeeney will play players that aren't on his first 15. But I think McGeeney has more strength and depth than most teams in the country. And I don't think you'll see such a huge weakness there. And what you'll actually see is a huge hunger. And everybody from the outside say, he's putting out a weaker team. And I've seen it a number of times in the league with Armagh. You said, geez, where's the weakness?
Yeah.
Where's the so-called, why are they not playing all the time? Because they have a good enough team, So, but then what you can't replicate is, you've said it, Armagh are after qualifying. Well, then that means Derry, Galway and Dublin should be fighting for their lives as if this could potentially be their last game. And that's where Galway should have an edge. But that's not guaranteed either.
No, I don't. So Armagh will just have to wait and see what team they name and then what team takes the actual pitch as well. Galway are just really confusing, aren't they? Lost like everybody looking at Galway and thinking this is it now, they're building under Joyce, 2 All-Ireland final defeats, but it's just all year they've been sort of shipping water, be it with the fitness of Walsh and Comer Connacht final, Mayo draw level with 20 minutes to go, wind at their backs. Mayo probably should have gone on and won that game, didn't. Then Galway and lose to Dublin. And you're thinking this is getting really serious. And they got very lucky against Derry. Well, look, or you could flip it and say they showed great character against Derry, whichever way you want to play, coming back from 6 points down with 6 minutes to go. But they've put themselves here in really tricky spot. Like, I don't know what to make of them or what's going on, but it just feels Walsh, fitness not right, Comer, getting up to speed. Maybe Conroy's not playing as well as last year. Likes of Killian McDade, Conroy, Walsh, all on the bench for the last few minutes against Derry. I don't know. Like, what are you seeing with this crowd at the moment?
Well, you could run them over and you could run them over, and you could give out and say for All Ireland contenders that they could potentially get out of the group of death without even winning a match. You could say, but then you could look at it from another point of view and say, right, we haven't even touched on what we're capable of, and we're still there. But they're running out of runway, and they need, and I think especially their big men need to step up. And I have heard Joyce all year long, and I'd say it's the mantra that they'll be going with. It's a 15-man team, so if you're depending on Shane Walsh, or if you're depending on Paul Conroy or Killian McDade or whoever else, then you will. That's the rock you'll perish on. They'll need huge performances from everybody. I don't know, is it the fact that everybody had them down as favourites a couple of months ago and everybody talking them up? Does that sink into the psyche? Does that, I don't know, but they're not playing with the edge or the danger up front in particular. Yeah. That's what's jumping out at me, Joe. Yes, they got 4 goals. You could argue 1 or 2 of them are fortuitous, but I would say that we have yet to see the best of them. Therefore, it's like the Cork hurlers. When they spark, they spark. And you'd still have to give them the benefit of the doubt that if they do, they still have the players to actually perform better than what they're doing. But they have been disappointing so far in the championship, and I'd say they'd admit that themselves.
Yeah. I'm not even going to ask you to call that game because it's very hard without even seeing the teams. So we'll just have
I think a lot of people, I think it's an extremely hard game to call. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't a clue how to
No, I think anyone who comes on and says...
I go for Galway. If you have to
okay. Just because of the desperation. Because of the desperation. Yeah. Yeah, but like, isn't it funny? That's the kind of thing we're clinging to here. Like, you know, they'll be desperate, so you're hoping there's something there. I mean, it's kind of wing and a prayer stuff, isn't it?
It is. Like, I don't, like, when you just say there, all their key players ended up on the bench. Derry got gas from it, but I think it's disrespecting Derry because Derry have been through the wars. Maybe they're that little bit, maybe they've turned their corner.
Yeah.
Galway have to make sure that they turn their corner the next night. I think, if you look at it, imagine Galway go up the road and just at the right time, it clicks for them.
Yeah.
And they come away with a big performance. They're heading into preliminary quarterfinals and they're in a good place. They get another match. Then they'll be in a huge place. It could turn in a week.
No, it's true.
And it will for certain teams. It'll have to because there's too many of them hit and miss at the moment.
Yeah, I know you like your golf. There's a degree of like, if McIlroy's driver clicks, then suddenly this week is on. And if suddenly Shane Walsh and Comer and these boys get a bit of juice going, then suddenly Galway are back, no questions asked. But we just haven't seen it yet. So that's that group. That's on Saturday night. One way or another, a significant team is going. I know you're on the live coverage on Sunday then in RTE. So Tyrone Cavan, Brewster Park, and then Donegal Mayo at Dr. Hyde Park, both 4:00 throw-ins. This group is amazing in that all 4 teams head into this final round of games. They're all on 2 points. Every team could theoretically finish in any position by full time. You'd say Tyrone are in the best position in that they have to play Cavan, and Cavan haven't beaten Tyrone in the championship since 1983. So assuming Tyrone beat Cavan for a second, that leaves Mayo in a really interesting spot because the head-to-head against Cavan is going to get them because Cavan obviously beat Mayo. So even if Cavan lose, if Mayo don't get a draw or a win against Donegal, then it's Mayo who are gone. And Donegal will be very fired up because were Cavan to shock Tyrone, then Donegal can't afford to lose to Mayo. So everybody has something really big to play for here. This is that quintessential point we were making a few minutes ago. There's no true line of sense here in terms of the results in this group. Like, I don't know. Donegal Mayo, go.
Yeah, I read, you'd be looking, I always try to read what's going on with the players, former players from those counties. I read Lee Keegan this morning. I was listening to a couple of Donegal lads a few days ago. They're happy enough with the way they're moving along, even though the Tyrone game, like, it doesn't make sense, Joe. Tyrone beat Donegal,
Yeah.
Cavan beat Mayo.
Yeah.
Mayo go up then and beat Tyrone. Like, it's very, very strange. All four teams on 2 points. I honestly would find it very hard to call. For me, Donegal should have been kicking on that little bit more, and Donegal should be fully in control of this game. Yet, it's Mayo, and I don't think you'd be discussing Mayo as a team that will in any way be a threat towards the end of the championship. However, psychologically, what the performance they gave last time out, and the fact that they don't mind going to Hyde Park, they don't mind playing Northern teams, anything could happen. I think Donegal have failed to flatter consistently, and this is my point from earlier on. They looked so good on certain nights, but then bang average on other nights. But at the same time, I'd expect if they go to what we've seen all season, I'd just about give it to Donegal. But I would say it wouldn't surprise me if Mayo won. But I would think at this stage of the championship and what's online now, I don't see Cavan turning Tyrone over.
No.
So therefore Donegal would be safe anyway. But I would still think that it would be important for Donegal to get a win here, because I think psychologically at this stage of the year and at this stage of the competition, you can't afford to be getting dense like that, even though if there's any team psychologically, I would say McGeeney's team and McGuinness's team don't pay much attention to what's happening in the outside world and don't listen to the outside noise like other teams do.
It's obviously it's a little simplistic to reduce a game down to work rate, but Mayo against Tyrone were kind of ferocious. You know, it was back to that kind of chaotic Mayo, hard running, breaking ball, competing for everything, a little bit of chaos thrown in. And so it's just one game of that. Can they replicate that against Donegal with their championship on the line? No reason they shouldn't. But again, we just haven't seen them do it enough. So we'll see, because they still Mayo have that physicality to cause any team trouble, don't they? Even at Donegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, the last game against Tyrone, like, I've seen it and I think it's kind of it's not a half an insult, but is it too simplistic to say, oh, Mayo were ravenous all over the pitch? They did so well on kickouts, they did so well on breaking ball, they moved the ball so quickly, they were supporting each other. Any chance that they got for kicking it long, they kicked it long, but at the same time, they were less over and back. They were trying to hurt all the time. But then you read every paper, and it wasn't that Mayo were excellent. It was because the Tyrone had this kind of off day. Like, so Tyrone have a good day, then they have an off day, and that's the reason. That's the reason why Mayo won. And I don't think that's fair on Mayo, because obviously their backs were to the wall. They were coming in under severe pressure after losing to Cavan. Kevin McStay is not there. On the sideline, I've never seen, and I saw a few cameras on the Mayo management, as excited and as revved up as they were. I suppose it's like this. Can they back that up? Can they bring that manic aggressiveness, work rate? And I don't care what anybody says, Joe, that is a huge part of the new rules. Obviously, you need skill set to win every department, but a lot of the new rules, kickouts, we'll say, for example, the 11 back, a lot of it is, if you can work your socks off, then you will get opportunities. If you can win that primary possession and move the ball quickly, you will get opportunities.
It's funny you say that, because I'm really coming around to that more and more. as we watch these new rules. The game is less controllable now from a coach's perspective. You can't just play out and keep possession from a kick out automatically, and then teams get used to that and they drop off you anyway. There's now far more competition at kick out time. There's far more breaking ball. And, it's hard to strategize for a breaking ball. Like, there is just a degree of who's that bit more ravenous to get the breaking ball. And that's kind of an unsatisfactory thing to say when you're trying to analyse a game. It's a fairly basic thing. The control's gone. So there is,
the control is gone. And I would say an awful amount of teams in the north are very, very well coached. And throughout the league and throughout an awful amount of the early part of these new rules being introduced, the biggest voices of dissent were coming from that area. And in terms of the rules and why would we change them and all that. But a big part of it, even though nobody will say it, is because the lack of control, let's say on short kickouts, on having 15 back rather than having 11 back, that comfort is gone. And it doesn't mean that every team is suddenly going to kick the ball up the field and all that so quickly and you're going to have brilliant football to watch. No, it doesn't mean that at all. And teams, as we go further in the championship, actually, I think you'll see less of it. But definitely it gives teams that wouldn't be seen as a team to compare against another team a better chance.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you're seeing such results being flipped over and back, because I played at wing back for years and my job wasn't to jump. I did not jump for a ball unless my name was called to jump, that I was up. That's the only time I would jump for a ball. I did not run for a short kick out because short kick out was not in Dermot Murphy's vocabulary. It wasn't in anybody's vocabulary until Cluxon came along. My job was, ball goes out, normally Dara, William Kirby, whoever it was, my job was to get breaking ball. Now, I could position myself in one position and I'd get that break. But the next time, I could position myself in the same position and I wouldn't get the break.
Yeah.
But more often than not, the lads who were excellent, Galvin, like one guy would plant himself right under it and wait for it. If you ever watch Paul Galvin, who was noted for it, Paul would start his runs about 25 yards out and be on a full sprint, but still 10 yards away once it's broken, and he'd bounce left or right wherever the break was. So it was very hard for a wing back to pick him up. So it's not, I suppose the point I'm trying to say, you can't legislate for you can't practice it. What you can make sure is you will have a better chance if you have 11 fellas under it that'll die for it. And that's what you're seeing, fellas who'll actually fight that little bit more, get that little bit of a look, are tending to come out on top there.
Yeah, it's funny you say Galvin, because I was just thinking, if I was an inter-county manager now, one of the first things I'd do would be to get on the phone to Galvin and say, can you come in and tell us how you won so much breaking ball? And that point you make about timing of your run, coming at speed, coming from distance, but with enough time to adapt to whichever way the ball might go. Because that's an art form a lot of these guys haven't had to think about for 5-10 years,
Wasn't it Mickey Hart who used to always say, "Oh, is there not a skill in that?" There is a skill in it, of course there is.
Yeah.
And I know we'd love to see a fella kicking a ball from a sideline with the outside of the boot, but there's just as much skill in that. And a Brian Fenton soaring high in the air, catching a brilliant ball, that's only one possession. Whereas that one dirty carpet ball that you get is also one possession. Equates to the same thing.
Yeah.
You possession, you won. So it's vital. It's a huge part of the game now that we haven't practiced in years, Joe. We have not practiced in years, and it'll only get better. And again, those dissenting voices from the north, I bet they're at the cutting edge. I can see it now. They're the ones that will unlock a lot of the way we'll play in the future. They're brilliant. They think about coaching a lot more than we do. Maybe there's something in it like that. Maybe we think tradition is enough. It's not. You have to combine everything. I think tradition can be a great tool, but you have to combine a lot of coaching to it as well.
Yeah. One of the clearest nights where we saw the new importance, or the importance once again of winning breaking ball, I thought was when Meath beat Dublin. Dublin not practiced and worrying, fighting for breaking ball. Meath were ravenous, the crowd behind them, and they cleaned Dublin out of the kickouts. clean, and so like so then this is a completely new sport to what Dublin played for the last 10 years. You're down to 50% possession if you're lucky. So I think that is one of the reasons these games are proven harder to call, because it's harder to call who's going to dominate possession in that sense, or win. You know, like there's moments in games now where there's a 10-minute spell where a team just can't get out, you know, and that was never the case.
You, Joe, right now, pick the team that seem to be right now, and we'll probably put the kibosh on them after this, but pick the team who are the best from a kicking out point of view, and who are picking out their men and getting most possessions. And probably stats will say it against me, but I think there's one team that stand out. I think it's Armagh.
I was just going to say Armagh
is absolutely just outstanding at it. He's a lot more consistent.
I think the stats back you up. He was 16 from 17 in one game in Ulster, which nobody else is hitting.
But a lot of teams are doing well, Joe, in banging it out the middle and improving on their breaking balls. He'll bang it out the middle, but it will be percentage-wise advantage to Armagh, because he's not just banging it out. He's banging it out all right, but he's putting it in a position where there's a fella running into it, or there's a guy planted, and there's less other bodies because they have worked on it. And you know, it's I think the more other teams see this, the more they develop, the more time they get to spend on this. We'll just see a very, very good game in 2 years. Whereas at the start of the league, we had every manager giving out about scrums developing under it. But I think it'll develop into a brilliant game.
Come here, you've just twigged something in my mind I want to ask you. So you were at Croke Park, and I know it was windy. Has Cluxton, and it happens, it's one of the things that happens when you get older, you just lose distance in your kicking. Is he now struggling to beat a press? Does he still have 45 metres in the legs?
I don't know, did Cluxton ever beat the press? Like, I played at wing back 1 year, but the genius of Cluxton was his ability to change mid-game if he had to. I've said it a few times, Flynn and Connolly were the two wing forwards, and we had it worked out in terms of the analysis that we did, that 70% of the time he was hitting the two boys. This is throughout their whole championship. This is throughout the Leinster championship. This was at semi-final stage. So this was throughout their whole championship. He was hitting the two boys. He wasn't going short at all. And smack bang, boom. We were coached, like, even when if we were in possession and the ball was in mid-air, we were latched on to Connolly, we were latched on to Flynn, we were latched on to their midfielders, so that wasn't an option for him. And you see the genius of Cluxton. He didn't even wait till halftime. He just started pinging them to the cornerback straight away. We hadn't even worked on it. We were so sure that they wouldn't do that. And this was before he started doing all that.
Yeah.
That we had no work done on that. But my question would be, was he ever a fella that would bang the ball consistently into the opposition half? I don't think so. But what he would do was he found comfort in finding space. And because the Dubs were so good, a lot of the teams gave them that little bit of space up front, so he was well able to pick out players. But that's gone. And I think that night against Meath, you mentioned it, I think that was a huge eye-opener for the Dubs, because they came out against Galway the next night and they did very well on kickouts that night. And I think there has to be a bit of acceptance on Cluxton that he's not going to have the control that he once did, or to have the space to kick into, or the pockets to kick into like he once did, because teams believe that they can really go after teams and push up on teams. And again, that's coming from the rules. You push up, they can't. And a big part of that is they can't go back to the goalie. You get a short one off, Joe, you can't go back to the goalie. And that's
true.
It's not being spoken about, but it's actually a brilliant rule change. And
well, it means teams are pushing up,
taken away from his game as well. Like,
and teams are pushing up therefore because they know that defender can't go back to goalkeeper. So I almost feel sorry for him, because obviously the precision and the brilliance for so long. For so long, I now feel it's like putting Lewis Hamilton in a Ford Fiesta. It's like he just has to boot it up there, and they're dragging Con back to go win a 50-50. It's beneath Stephen Cluxton's left foot. It's terrible.
But I guarantee you, watch him develop. I guarantee you, before Dublin are knocked out of the championship, you'll probably see it the next night a lot more, even though it'll be harder.
Yeah.
It'll be right tough above in Park Esler. But I guarantee you they'll get better at that, because they'll be forced to get better than that. Or else you'll be facing what you faced against Armagh for the second quarter, or what you face against. If you don't think it out because it was thrown at Mayo, Joe, that they had no kick-out plan.
Yeah.
It was thrown at them a number of times this year that their only kick-out plan was bang it straight down the middle.
Yeah.
And if you ask me, they did something similar against Tyrone. The reason being that it was a success is that they had scavengers right under the breaking ball every time, and it worked out. So, yeah, I think you'll see it develop, and it'll be good for the game the way it'll develop, because you'll see a lot more high feeling in the mix as well.
Yeah. Just a quick one then. Louth Clare is a shootout, and Roscommon Cork is a shootout. You're obviously down in Cork, so you have a feel for things. That's on in O'Moore Park Saturday, 4:15 GAA Plus. Kerry and Meath already through. So Cork Roscommon looks like a fairly even contest. Is either jumping off the page there? And again, is it the Cork who played Kerry early on, or is it the other Cork?
That's what will be thrown. That's the big question, and that's unfortunately until Cork answer that for themselves. I think Cork will be in the unknown, and everybody else looking at them or following them will be in the unknown as well. I think both teams, Roscommon and Cork, will feel that they're capable of beating each other.
Yeah.
I think if you looked on paper, Roscommon probably have a forward line that's that little bit more threatening than Cork. However, on the other side of it, Cork have a huge amount of physicality around the middle of the park, which would ensure that they'd have a lot more ball. I think if Cork are to progress, then they'll have to give their best display in terms of capitalising on scores up front. And that's where it's at for Cork. I think Cork have shown me that they have plenty ability in their defence, plenty ability in their ball winning. It's just up front that they're missing a marquee forward or two to make sure to hammer home. I think it's an extremely hard one to call. I think that'd be a brilliant match to watch because it's pure knockout. One of those teams will not be going further in the championship, and that's why the same with Clare and Louth. I think you're going to have a fascinating match because there's going to be that championship feel, pure knockout, and the season is on the line.
Yeah.
And are you telling me that either Cork or Roscommon, if they win the next day, couldn't throw a dent or a spanner in a preliminary quarter final? They could. So I'd be looking at those games, in particular the Cork game. I think that'd be a cracker.
Yeah. So to conclude, the only team I feel confident about now that they will go into a game and put in a performance is Armagh, and everyone else I'm sort of sitting back a little less sure. It's kind of where I am in this championship at the moment. It's not to say Armagh will definitely win the All-Ireland, but they're the only one that are kind of consistently hammering out performances. A little harsh on Kerry, who aren't being overly tested maybe, but that's about the gist of it.
No, I'd agree with that. I mean, you can you call out the other teams that everybody's bandying about: Dublin, Tyrone, Donegal, Galway, Kerry. You can pick holes in all of them. And you can still pick holes in Armagh as well, Joe, but they have been the most consistent without doubt.
Alrighty, we'll know a lot more maybe after this weekend, I hope. So let's see what twist the form lines take. Tomás, that was great. You're on the TV for the doubleheader on Sunday, are you?
I am indeed. I'll be with Cora and Conor McManus.
All right, very good. And you're in the Hyde for that one, are you?
I am. I made my debut in the Hyde years ago.
Did you?
My league debut was in the Hyde years ago. I have a half back line of Liam Flaherty, Eamon Breen and myself.
Oh, jeez. You're no spring chicken.
Two lunatics and myself.
But by the way, when you just said there that the two wing forwards for Dublin were Flynn and Conley, Jesus.
I know, yeah.
Good luck, like.
And then you had the two Brogans, and you had Kilkenny, and you had... Yeah. And I still would argue, well, for me, I know I didn't come across Dublin, I was gone in 13, so Tyrone, I would argue, in their pomp, had probably a better forward line.
Oh yeah, go on, give me that one. The 05, 03, 08 team.
Yeah, well, you had Canavan, you had Mulligan, you had McGuigan, you had O'Neill, you had Dooher.
God.
Like, Jesus.
God.
You had Kavanagh sometimes at half forward.
Okay.
Do you know?
Okay, there's 6 good ones.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Super. Thanks a mil.
No bother, Joe.